What do you get when you combine a world-class EMS physician and medical director
I speak pretty good English for a guy from Detroit.
with an EMS veteran and all-around nice guy?
Well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh, that's so good. Oh, my God.
Well, you get the EMS show. Taking it to the people, here's your host, Dr. Ritu and Mike Vercast.
Well, what is up, party people? Happy Tuesday to my brothers. What's up?
Happy Tuesday.
It is happy. What is it? State of the Union Tuesday.
That's right. So you're like the president, and then like behind you is the vice president and the Speaker of the House. Kind of look how we're set up.
You made me choke on this wild turkey. Do you know how bad that hurts? I'm dying.
I'm not going to be Kevin McCarthy. I'm just going to say it right now.
Oh my God. Well, yeah.
So Ritu, please tell me it's like the 101 wild turkey or the McConaughey wild turkey.
It was me with the wild turkey.
Oh, well, I can't see that. Yeah. Okay.
He's got the wild turkey rare breed, which
that's not the rock gut stuff. That's the good stuff there, huh?
Yeah, I got the Broken Top Mountain Whiskey from Sisters, Oregon, straight rye whiskey. I've got that in a diet, the rye and diet.
Riot.
Or actually, it's a Coke Zero, but
it's called a riot.
A riot.
Sisters, that's like just what is it? West of Bend on the other side of the mountains. Is that it?
Yep.
It's kind of like nestled right in the mountains. It's like you go into the mountains. If you're coming from our side, you go up into the mountains, and the first town you hit is Sisters. It's a cute.
There's like a big Y in a road or something there, isn't there?
There's a big.
I seem to remember thinking it's a pretty nice little community. I think there's some big Y in the road to get to Bend. I seem to remember going through Sisters to get to Bend.
Yeah, you definitely did.
You do. Depending on which you take. So.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty place.
So what are you drinking?
I'm drinking out of my Corvette glass that I got the last time I saw Mikey and our buddy Eric together. We were in Kentucky, and I went and test drove some Corvettes on their little lap. Oh, very cool. And I got the glass, and right now I'm drinking Weller's.
Oh.
Good stuff.
Well, I will tell you, what was I going to say? Man, I just completely lost it. I don't even know.
It was very important.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to tell the people what we're going to tell them.
Yeah, what are we going to do tonight?
And then we can jump back in, because we do have a hot topic that I was riled up about prior to going live here. But so we're going to talk about an NAEMSP. You guys got to go to NAEMSP. This guy did not, which sucks.
Yeah, I let your CMO know that.
There was a notable absence there. I think ESO was missing. Maybe it's one of its stars.
Oh, this guy with this beard.
With that beard.
All right. So here, let me go ahead and say this, Mikey. Bill Toon does not know what he's talking about. You do not look pale, and I really like the beard.
He said I look dead.
I was trying to be nice.
I like the beard also. I think it looks great.
Never in my life have I ever done something like that.
How long did it take you? Like 6-8 weeks to grow that much? Yeah.
Oh, come on. There's Jay-Z.
That was me.
No,
that was me.
This is like this morning for me.
Honestly, I can do this. Is probably, well, I keep it trimmed up a little bit, because that was the other thing. I got me the brush. I told you I got a brush, and I got the cream, and I got the trimmer, right? And so I use a 5, so I can get to this in probably 10 days, probably. I don't know, something like
this is about 54 years worth of growth.
That's exactly
how long it's taken me.
He's never going to shave again.
Never.
And nobody can see it anyway.
He never has. That's the thing.
But anyway,
I walked out of my last ER shift October 26th. Haven't started up in my new gig yet, and I'm like, you know what? I'm growing a beard. Damn it! Take that.
I I just grew a beard anyway. So, so a bunch of my partners have beards, and we're all like, whatever. At this point, I've been vaccinated 11 times. So.
I was looking back at the pre-COVID days, and so we've been doing this podcast for a long time. Well, a podcast together for a long time, and man, it's so funny to look back and see no facial hair and like the short hair, and now it's like just totally opposite. It's just wild.
I look at my before COVID pictures and I'm like, oh, that's right. I used to like be a runner. What the hell happened to that guy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. COVID and bourbon and not exercising and food. That's what happened. But I'm blaming it on COVID.
Yeah, it's definitely that. It's definitely that.
Got to keep our story straight.
So we've covered the kind of what's we're drinking real quick. We're going to talk about NAEMSP. We're going to do a quick recap on some of these guys' favorite papers, talks that they went to, the people they met. We had a pretty good text thread going earlier with some stuff that's not appropriate for this audience here, but it was pretty hilarious. So really,
I would like to just a shout out, Mikey, to Dr. Intern, who's one of the DFR medical directors. I think he had some fascinating insight into what motivates Dr. Pickett.
Yes, very, very much so. Very much so. Let's leave it at that. I wish I could show you guys.
Yeah. No, I think we would all be in trouble if we did that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a rating above, what we have. So yeah, I can't do that. But anyway, one thing we're going to be on the clock here. We got just a couple minutes, but we were talking about we should just give a quick like what are we watching? What's going on nowadays and in the lives when I say when we're not out doing the stuff that we're doing, right? And so since Jarvis is our guest, we'll let him go first. But what are you watching right now?
So my daughter convinced us to watch Wednesday. I think that's a quirky show, kind of Addams Family spinoff, really good. And then on Apple TV, we were watching Invasion. I like that. And then, of course, we got to keep up, especially being in Fort Worth now. Got to keep up with the Yellowstone saga with its Fort Worth connection. So,
okay, all right, that's good. Ritu, what about you? What are you keeping an eye on? What are you guys watching?
Well, I think you and I had one of the same ones, but I think the best show on TV right now is The Last of Us on HBO. Oh, made you cough. Those, so it's on HBO. It is a post-apocalyptic zombie thing. Not really zombies, but it's about a post-apocalyptic world where there's been a massive fungal pandemic, and the fungus gets into the brain and makes people want to eat other people. And but it's based on a video game called The Last of Us. Mm-hmm. And I've never played the game because it's only on PlayStation, and I do my gaming on PC, but the PC version is coming out next month, so I'm very excited by that. But it's Pedro Pascal and
AKA the Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian, and also the female lead, Ellie. She was the one that played the young Lady Mormont on in Game of Thrones. So that it's fantastic. The third episode may have been, was this beautiful love story. It may have been one of the best episodes of TV I've seen in a long time. And then we started watching Shrinking on Apple TV.
Oh, Harrison Ford.
Yeah, so it's made by Bill Lawrence, who made who's the showrunner for Ted Lasso, who's also the showrunner for Scrubs, and I didn't know if you knew that there was a connection between Scrubs and Ted Lasso, but the lead writer for Ted Lasso is Brett Goldstein, who plays the Roy Kent. That's he's also the lead writer for Ted Lasso. He's one of the lead writers for this show. It's a 30-minute comedy on Apple TV. There are a couple of laugh out loud kind of moments, which you feel good about, right? When you laugh really hard at something, it feels nice.
Yeah.
So I would really recommend that. It's very fun. It's very short. So we're putting Bill Toon to sleep, but that's okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Bill Toon's old. It's past his bedtime. He's already moved to Arizona.
He's actually already up for tomorrow. That's the thing. He just had breakfast and
he's on his way to Denny's right now.
yeah.
Sherry's
Well,
here on the West Coast.
You
It's
know,
Sherry.
Ritu, I thought you were going to say the thing that Ted Lasso and Shrinking had in common was they were both the most accurate views of their specialty, or in Scrubs. Scrubs, clearly the most accurate medical show I've ever seen. And Ted Lasso, for all I know, is the most accurate soccer show in the world. So
it's football. Yeah. I watched
I'm
The
gonna have
Last
to
of
watch
Us
it.
as well. I watched The Last of Us as well. Pretty good. I gotta be we watched, just finished Sunday, Monday, I don't know, in the last day or so. Watched the 177th episode of The Walking Dead. So we went all the way through. And I got to tell you, I'm super pissed. So I'm not going to give notice if people are watching or whatever. I'm not going to say nothing, but I'm super annoyed at the ending. And did you know that there are 6 spinoffs from that?
I didn't know there were any spin-offs.
Yes.
I mean, there's like Fear of the Walking Dead.
Yeah, there's Fear of the Walking. There's a whole bunch. There's one where Daryl, if you ever watched it, the motorcycle whatever guy, he's in Paris now somehow. I don't know. Not interested. But anyway, there's like 2 or 3 coming. One that's going to be sort of before the first episode of The Walking Dead that kind of shows what happened and kind of leading up to that. So that'll be kind of cool. And then Rick and Michonne, who are 2 of the main characters, are going to have their own spinoff. But I'm super pissed at the way that ended. But sort of along the same lines, though, Last of Us. Oh my gosh. So I watched them simultaneously, right? And Walking Dead, it's kind of dumb and whatever. I mean, I don't know. But The Last of Us, man, I don't know.
I was there.
That kind of hit me in the nervousness button a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how plausible something like that is, but the opening scene was pretty convincing, and I was like this. Oh, God.
Well, the show, the guy who made the game based the story, the concept on an actual fungus that takes over an ant's brain. Mm-hmm. And in the ant colony, once the fungus gets into the ant, it makes the infected ant attack the other ants, and then the fungus transmits that way. So that was what the guy who made the game kind of read that story, and it's a real thing, and kind of based. So what if this happened in humans? And that's what he based it on. And if you like that sort of post-apocalyptic thing, the other thing that we watched, and it was peak pandemic, and it made me laugh and cry and scared the piss out of me and made me go, oh my God, this sucks, is Station 11 on HBO.
Huh.
Is this the one with the airport? And
yeah.
Oh my God. I still think it's been like a year and a half since I've seen that. And I still think about like the opening scenes as the virus is going out.
Yeah.
People are stuck in hotel rooms. Oh my God. Yes.
That felt way too real. And that was,
yes.
You know, they actually filmed the first episode of that. They actually filmed the first episode of that show and then had to close down because of the pandemic. And then the final show came out like in late 2020. So we were still like fairly, I mean, you know, I get you probably weren't locked down in Texas because, you know, but I mean, it was still fairly pandemic-y, right? And that just hit hard. But it's really a beautifully done show with a fantastic payoff at the end.
Absolutely. Really, really good show. That's, you know, there are some shows that just, you know, you watch and you think, yeah, that's cute. Okay. That entertained me. And then there are shows that just stick in your brain and like little plot twist or different visions in the picture. They just really stick with you. That was definitely one that got me.
Yeah. And the book is beloved. And I read the book after I saw the show, and the thing I would say is it's different, and it's different enough that they're just different. And I think people who read the book first love the book more, and people who saw the show first love the show first.
Yeah. I wonder what the people are watching.
What?
So we got like 15, 17 people watching. What are you guys watching? Put it in the chat. I'd be kind of curious. But
we got looks like Matt Willens. Hey, Matt is saying the 100. He likes that. I think that's like the Is this the one from space where we, I don't know, did something bad to the planet? Everybody lived up in space, and then we had to send somebody down to see if it was recuperated and send 100 people down. I wonder if that was the one.
Space?
Hey, you know, I'm trying to set you up here. You know, like a segue. What's that shirt you got?
Oh, this one. This is my wingman shirt, my Top Gun shirt.
Well, how about, you know, if you want to show off shirts, y'all may know I'm from Houston, and I'm an Astros fan, but it turns out, in addition to the world champions Astros, we do have something else in Houston.
Asan.
Asan?
Asan.
Ah, shit. I hate it when that happens. Let me help you out. That was Altuve in an astronaut suit hitting the baseball in front of the NASA logo. So what's going on with NASA? One of these days I'll remember to flip the camera.
NASA.
Mikey, what's going on with NASA?
Well, I'm sure all 6 people that are watching has probably already heard it, but I got some very exciting news. So apparently for each, over the last, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years, I think NASA has put out a call for people to apply to essentially get media credentials, and get behind the scenes tours, but they do it from a social media angle. So it's basically to open invitation to the general public to say, hey, would you like to come and get like a peek behind the curtain at NASA and have access to subject matter experts and just the whole 9 yards, and just come and get the full experience. And so I saw the ad. It wasn't an ad, but it was just a post that NASA did. And this was like 2 weeks ago. And I thought, well, it piqued my interest. So I clicked on it and started reading it. They're like, it doesn't matter if you've got like 50 followers or 1 million followers or whatever. Well, I certainly don't have 1 million at all. And
2 was like 2 followers. Hey, that's me.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm like, oh, all right. So I started filling it out, and then they ask you to like put the numbers in there. I'm like, okay, well, this is what I got for follower. I don't even have Instagram or anything. So anyway, honestly, I didn't think twice. I just did it while I was sitting on the couch. And then Friday, I don't know. I literally get an email from NASA saying that,
because I was on a conference call when you called me.
Oh, was it? I called 17 people and only Ritu answered. That
was the first one you called.
I mean, the first one I called. Yeah, for sure. First one I called.
Well, you didn't even call me. You just texted me.
Well, I know. I don't know where people are at and doing stuff. So, but anyway,
I mean, I know.
I get to go to NASA, go behind the scenes with the Crew 6 launch, which is a SpaceX going to the International Space Station. They're going to be doing a bunch of cool scientific stuff, including a bunch of medical stuff. So I started writing a list down of the things I want to tie it into EMS, right? Here we go. We're into EMS. It only took us 18 minutes. But I want there to be a bit of a hook to kind of connect what we do to the things that are sort of done out there, right? At NASA, right? And whatever it is. So like I started watching and getting a little bit more in tune with what is this whole mission about? What are they going to go do? Who are the people? All this kind of stuff. And so I just started, and actually I watched a show Sunday morning at like 6 a.m. because I couldn't sleep on the internet. It's called Stories from the Space Station, I think. And it's about the ISS and a bunch of people. Anyway, so I just started thinking about all these different, like, what kind of questions or what would make cool content. So I just started thinking, like the use of checklists, right? Like they don't just sort of willy-nilly go do stuff, right? Everything's got a checklist. And I'm curious as to I kind of know the answer, but I want to bring it all back together. So simulation and training, physicals and qualifications. I want to know what happens to the physiology of blood, oxygen saturated, all these different things. What happens when you're in, what's the effect of zero or near zero gravity on human systems, right? Evacuation, medical supplies and training, emergencies, data, how do they collect it? What's crunched? How do they use it for improvement? All kinds of just different stuff. So I want to be able to kind of tie it in and tell a little bit of a story and wrap it all back around to kind of what we're doing. So it's very exciting. Like, it's just awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Mikey,
congratulations, buddy.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
So
I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
Cheers, my friend.
Yes. Thank you. Cheersies. Yeah. It's very exciting. Yes. Clinky, blink. So Anyway, so enough about all this crap. I'm sure people are. Let's talk about NAEMSP. It was held just a couple weeks ago.
Arg, matey.
Yeah, there was that too. We'll get to the pirate situation in a minute, but
there were pirates.
Well, the what?
There were pirates.
I know there were pirates.
Arg.
You know what?
There
You know
were
what a pirate.
lots of words.
I didn't even send you the picture of me that is going to haunt me if I do.
Do you know what a pirate's favorite letter is?
R.
R.
It be C.
Nah. R.
Okay.
I'm sticking with R.
I heard that from an
It's
actual
also
pirate.
a superior programming language.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Let's start with Jarvis. What was your experience? How was it? Did you enjoy it? Was it too much? Just quick overview, and then we'll get into some of the specific stuff.
Yeah, great conference as always. This is the highlight of the conference year, other than the conferences that paid me to come, of course. Those are wonderful. But it's great conference. It is the place to go to present EMS research. And it's also the place to go where all of your other EMS physician and EMS professionals are going to be. So wonderful conference, great research there, great friends, wonderful place.
Ritu, you know a little something about this little shindig.
Well, I do, but it was a little bit different. So just so I can brag about myself, I mean, yes, I was the president of this association.
Thank you.
At one point in my life, but I didn't go last. 2020 we had one. 2021 was virtual, and then last year we were in the midst of Omicron, and we were having a big surge here to the point where I had actually advised local government to cancel a couple of things where there were going to be a lot of people in small rooms together. Yeah. And so I was like, I can't go to a conference if I'm going to tell people to do that. So I ended up bailing, and I heard from Jerry Lynn, the executive director, that 250 people actually canceled the weekend before the conference last year. So I didn't go last year. This was the first time I'd been to this conference since 2020. And I was a little discombobulated and a little bit like, one, I forgot that it's definitely a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah.
In terms of one, working out your liver, but two, just the amount of stuff that goes on. I was asked to speak at the medical director's course, which was my second time speaking there, or third. But they always ask the president to speak, so I kind of felt like they had to ask me then. So this was the first time they asked Ritu to speak and not the president of NAEMSP.
That's cool.
So I was very touched. I actually kind of got tearful. I told Bob Swore afterwards, like, I kind of misty-eyed when I got the email from you. But as a result, I was there for 6 days, and it was so much. It was so much, and it was so great. It was great. And then we're a packed site for research, and the PAC trial paid for a number of our personnel, our EMS personnel, to come. So we had a large contingent from the agencies that I work with, and of all of them, there are a lot of medical directors in the Portland metro area, and we sat down and counted one day that there was only one left. So Mike Murray was the only medical director in Portland during that whole week, and there were like 8 of us here, or 8 of us in Tampa. So it was great. And then the research was fantastic, but just you leave like, oh my God, this is what we do. We do such. Yeah. This is so important. It's not driving people to the hospital. It's medicine. It's making the world better. And then for me, the other thing is, I mean, there were 1,500 people that attended this conference.
Yeah.
And one previous high was about 1,000. So it was back, and there were so many fellows and young medical directors. who didn't know who I was. That was a little bit weird. It's really changed. I mean, when I was president, I got a chance to stand up and say, this is the first conference with 1,000 people attending. So we're already 50% bigger.
Yeah.
So
Wild.
it was fantastic. And, I mean, I would like to think our listenership is interested in more than just putting people in the back of an ambulance and driving them to the hospital. So I think it's a great conference to learn the whys and to learn what's coming down the pipeline from your medical directors and understand the issues that we are dealing with kind of on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I'll tell you from someone that had to watch from home, it seemed as though, I don't know.
And there were pirates. There were pirates.
Yeah, there were definitely pirates. But it just seemed like there was so much engagement on social media and like people just sharing, quotes from talks or pictures. I mean, there's always an element of that, but I just felt like I was completely in tune to the stuff that was going on there. Right. That was pretty awesome.
Mikey, let me tell you a little bit about that. That didn't just happen by accident. There is a social media committee at NAEMSP.
Indeed, I was on
and
it.
That's a concerted effort. So Clayton Kazan, Dr. Kazan was the outgoing. Dr. Morschetti is the incoming chair of that committee. And they work really hard to get that message out and promote what's going on at NAEMSP, specifically promoting the research and the contributions to the field that all of the attendees are making. One of the cool things is, and this has been at NAEMSP for years, they always have great big monitors up that just show scrolling this mosaic of the Twitter feed. It's all over the place, but that didn't happen by accident.
Yeah.
Great committee work.
As Jay-Z said, so many tweets. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot to keep up on, but thank God for hashtags, right? I mean, it worked out perfect. Assuming people used them, I was able to kind of keep up, and that was pretty cool. So I know there was a couple of things we specifically wanted to talk about tonight. I don't have any visuals or anything like that. Oh, one thing I wanted to talk about real quick.
Pirates.
So,
we're going to talk about pirates.
We'll get to the pirates. Yes, there was a pirate festival on the last day, and everyone was excited. Whatever. Okay, there's the pirates. But I guess the sort of the gal that stole the show was Lady Glockenfelcom or whatever her name was.
Yeah. You mean one of our saves?
Well, yes, one of our saves. That's not like protected information, I guess, right? It was in our
no.
It was in our area.
It's pretty public. He was the Dr. Glockenflecken was posting from the ICU, saying, "Well, I've been quiet for a few days, but I just had a cardiac arrest."
Yeah.
If you don't know him, first off, if you don't know him, shame on you. He's hilarious. But he's a pretty funny guy, and usually what he posts is comedy. And he posted that, and then that was it. Yeah. And I remember getting it in my feed going, I don't get it. That's not funny.
Where's the humor in this one?
Exactly. Yeah. And no humor. He really had a cardiac arrest, and his wife thought he was having, I don't know, snoring, some non-cardiac arrest thing.
Yeah.
Called 911, and the dispatcher walked her through CPR. She did CPR for over 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah.
It was amazing. She just straight up, her and that dispatcher saved his life. Yeah. And obviously the incredible response after they got to the scene. But yeah, it's really, really moving stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, the way I understand, I don't know. Did you guys did you get to watch her talk? Did you? Ritu, did you?
Yeah, Ritu, what was your take on her talk?
It was fabulous. I mean, I think the thing about it is that she reminded you, and we even talked about this in our QI meetings the last couple of days, but that there's more than one patient. Yeah. And as she pointed out, her husband's experience with a cardiac arrest is he went to bed one day and then he woke up 3 days later in the hospital without any underwear on. But
that's Glockenflecken. That's what we expect.
So she called 911, and we do no go here, and it was a no go. So yeah, this was in one of the two counties that I'm the medical director for, but it wasn't one of the agencies that I'm directly involved with. So it was Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and and it was so Dr. Daya, our good friend Mo Daya, and his agency, and he's also the medical director for the dispatch center that took the call. And yep, no go, and 10 minutes of compressions, and this is all stuff she said. So be clear, this is all stuff she said in her talk. So I'm not giving any
clearly
HIPAA violation. When she talked about how he'd been shocked 5 times, and I took a lot of things out of the talk, and the main thing is there's more than one patient, right? There's the patient you're working on, and there's the family member. And one of the things that we talked about afterwards, I talked with her, was whether we should, have a leave behind, not for the family, because the family are going to come, but when you have a public cardiac arrest and a bystander does CPR just kind of out of the blue, some form or some paper that you can leave behind, sort of thanking them for all that they did and understanding. Because it was kind of interesting too that our last episode, we talked to Ron Roth, but there was a very public cardiac arrest, and recognizing the trauma that occurs when a layperson visualizes a cardiac arrest. And to be fair and honest, we suffer that trauma too, and we just put it in the backpack and move on. And then someday that backpack full of shit just unloads on you.
Yeah.
But yeah, and one of the things that I've pointed out already to a number of people is that the lieutenant from Tualatin Valley who was assigned to her, and we do that in our cardiac arrests, we assign a person to the family to be the person who does the updating. She chose not to be in the room with the cardiac arrest, and the fact that he was up and down giving her updates. And I really think that she felt very cared for herself by the fire department that took care of her that day. Now, this also happened to be like nobody's allowed past the front door COVID time in the hospital. So she never actually saw him in the ICU. And it was pretty moving, kind of sort of her contrasting EMS giving her all this information immediately and her not being able to get a lot of information. She had to call, and there was a nurse that they finally built a relationship with that she was able to work with, but it was really hard.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So anyway, our old buddy Rob Lawrence grabbed her, I guess, on her way out. She was going to the airport, and he was able to grab her for like 10 minutes, and that should be coming out on Prodigy EMS probably pretty soon. I know Jay-Z put that in the comments, but Rob,
I think that,
and we're gonna have we're hoping to have Rob Lawrence as a guest on this show.
Yes,
for our Formula One preview.
Yes, indeed.
That's right.
Very exciting, actually.
So I think what Jay-Z was talking about is Prodigy. Bill Toon was talking about it would be nice to be able to see the lectures. And I believe Prodigy filmed all of them, and the intent is to get that content out.
Oh, wow.
In full. Yeah.
Perfect.
So speaking of just the impact that she made, so full room, 1,600 people in that room, and she's given this discussion. And, there's certainly some humor in it, but when she was recounting the event, boy, yeah, I was there. There were onions everywhere.
Not a fucking dry eye in the whole house.
No, she got me at least 5 times. The way she presented it. So the way she presented this, just from a visual impact, so emotional. She had the 911 audio, and she was, there was a little text on the bottom and a clock, and it was the dispatcher going over and over and over, counting down with her, coaching her to do compressions. You could hear a monitor charge and defibrillate.
Oh, wow.
Really high impact video, well done. And the fact that she was able to sit there and give that talk about how she was doing resuscitation on her husband, I'm pretty impressed with that. There's no way I could have done that.
Yeah, wild. So anyway,
really, really good.
Yeah, and back at it, back to work. He was on call for us the other day.
Yep.
I got a chance to call him and wake him up at 2 in the morning. It was awesome.
You say, hey, there's this scratch on this round thing in the face. I don't know what to do. What kind of eye drop should I use?
Yeah, that's right. I asked him if Visine was important. No, I did not. But it was kind of funny because it was a person that I was worried about having a detachment, and he had just, his whole like what happens when the ED calls ophthalmology video, like it played out. Like he asked me a bunch of questions, and then he finally goes, "I'll just see him in the morning." I'm like, "That's what I wanted from the beginning." I forgot to ask if Jonathan was available. So, yeah, that was a great talk, and it's good to. It was a good tone setter because at the end of the day, it reminds you why we do this.
Yeah,
we do this to save lives. We do this to we do this to save lives, and it's like. That sounds like great because we don't do that very often, but we also do this to improve human suffering, and that we do every fucking day. Yeah. And so it's not just about running that code. Oh, I got that airway. This was a really great code, but it's about taking care of that patient family also.
Yeah, and just talking about resuscitation, unfortunately, we know that the vast majority of patients that we do resuscitations on are probably not going to survive. But there is a family member, and that's really what she was talking about. I think we can almost always have an impact on that family member. This is a horrible, horrible time, worst time of their life. Anything we can do to ease that suffering a little bit, we can definitely have an impact on those family members. Great message.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like that. All right. So one of the first things after a day or two had gone by, after Ritu being there, I was texting him quite a few times. A few things that I know you want to talk about, and one of them, and I don't have any specific order. Did you care how we wanted to go about it? Do you want to talk about TBI real quick?
Yeah, we can talk about TBI. The last day of the conference, the morning, the entire morning was basically set aside to traumatic brain injury. And it was an overview of the Brain Trauma Foundation new guidelines that are either out now or coming out any day. And and just an overview of those guidelines. And you'll be surprised to hear that the guidelines focus on the H-bombs.
Yeah, weird.
I know, stunning, right? And so the guidelines really focus on avoiding hypotension, avoiding hypoxia, and avoiding hyperventilation. And it's the message from the EPIC TBI trial from Arizona, Dr. John Kramer, former NHTSA head, NHTSA EMS office boss, says that they're going to be out soon. So
all around really nice guy. Don't forget that part. Well,
very nice guy, and actually a personal mentor as somebody who, as I was working my way through the board, John was very important to me. I think did I offend Bill Toon? Really?
Yeah, that's okay. He's all right.
What are the odds? One of the three of us dropped an F-bomb. Now I think all of us are trying to figure out which one it was.
It was going to be me. It was going to be me. No,
I do try.
Yeah, no, it's usually me. Anyway, so that's I would say the message again is avoid those H-bombs. And I think the EPIC TBI trial showed that you can do that. And then Dan Spate, who is as we all know, a very entertaining speaker. The man is a preacher. Just going to put that out there. Preach, brother, because he really did. But he talked about oxygenation. And what was really interesting, we've talked a lot about oxygen equals poison, and especially in reperfusion. And I think when you're talking about stroke and STEMI, this idea that you hyperoxygenate could lead to worsening outcome in the reperfusion portion. So one of the questions was, well, is that a problem in TBI? And you know, to the short answer is their review of the Epic TBI data. In the unadjusted data, there is a little uptick in mortality in the group that was 100% FI, 100% SAT. But when they adjusted for severity of injury and those sorts of things, that effect went away. And his real message was that as an as EMS practitioners, when you are concerned about a head injury, you need to anticipate this person is going to have a rapid decline at some point. It might happen during your transport, or it might happen after they get to the hospital. And one of the things that's really key is avoiding hypoxia, and that we ought to be very aggressive in high flow O2 and those sorts of things. It sounds like basic, kind of like, oh, no, duh. But I think it's an important finding, and I think it's an important, and it does also, you know, this idea that one size fits all, you know, too much oxygen is bad or not bad. You know, as EMS practitioners, you have to figure out what's going on with your patient, and if the patient's having a STEMI, you know, I don't know that there's any. I think there's data that says don't flood them with oxygen, but if you're worried about a TBI, I think the data shows that you're not harming them, at least the Epic TBI data, which again is all retrospective, but it shows that you're not going to harm the patient and potentially going to help the patient by giving them making them hyperoxic.
So, I mean, I want to overall, yes. I think the thing about hyperoxia, we don't know about hyperoxia because we're just looking at SpO2s. I think the balance, we don't know about the impact of hyperoxia. It doesn't appear to be an impact, but one thing we do know is one episode of hypoxia in this population from these multiple studies, a 6.6-fold increase in the risk of death. Combine that with hypotension, just one little bitty episode, 13.2-fold increase in the risk of death. 13 times the risk of death. Big deal. And if you're looking at patients, particularly those you have to do an advanced airway on, their SATs can drop so incredibly rapidly. You need to buy as much time as you can by pre-oxygenating, and those folks hyperoxygenate the hell out of them. Yep. Once you get the tube in, then you can, you know, try to, and everything is comfortable, then you can try to get smart about titrating the oxygen, but keep it easily above 96, 97%. Absolutely.
And I think the other thing that was very interesting that has come out of their work, and he was reiterated by Dan in his talk, is that there's no threshold blood pressure. You know, we talk about hypotension being bad, but there's no like cliff, like everything's fine. And then if it drops below 90, then survival plummets. It looks like from their data that the best blood pressure might be a systolic of around 130, which is just mind blowing, right? And like our system, based on some preliminary data that they presented a couple of years ago, we increased our goal to above 100 systolic. Also, because we didn't want people to fall below 90, we figured if we want to prevent going below 90, we should maybe at least have 100. But I think their data shows 135. Again, it's retrospective. So these are the characteristics that were associated with better survival, not necessarily causality. So I can't say that there's proof that somebody's blood pressure is 100 if I make it 135, that they're going to have a better survival. But at least in terms of like their association, a systolic of 135 seems to be the best.
So Ritu, let me, if you don't mind, an artful segue here to some other research presented there.
Well, I was going to ask about a research paper that was presented where, like, for the first time in my voluminous career, I took some shit during a plenary session where research was presented. What was that about?
There might have been some incoming, and just so you know, I was not intending to do that, but it was just so easy, Ritu. I knew you were out there. I had to share some love, but let's come back to the love on that, because I really do, because this concept of oxygenation and perfusion, so important. And you're talking about the importance of it in TBI. Let's switch to post-ROSC.
Okay.
So cardiac arrest post-ROSC. Jim Menengazi presented some work that here's a name you should learn to hate. He is a second-year MD PhD student, soon to be Dr. Smita, who is putting us all to shame. Therefore, we should all hate him. He is just cranking out phenomenal work. They did, using the ESO data set combined with hospital outcomes, they did a series of papers looking at the impact of hypoxia or hypotension post-ROSC on survival to hospital discharge, which, as we know, is not a perfect surrogate marker for neurologically intact survival, but it's a pretty good one. And what he showed was a dose response curve on both blood pressure and saturation. So you're seeing a dramatic increase in the risk of walking out of the hospital after cardiac arrest as you increase your blood pressure post-ROSC and as you increase your saturation. And interestingly, when they got above, or I believe it was like 97, 98% saturation, they saw that curve flatten. So we had identified sort of peak benefit. And if they look at hypotension, they saw sort of the maximum benefit in blood pressures around the 130 range. And this was the thing, Ritu, just listening to you talk about TBIs, I think there's some corollary here to cardiac arrest. When we're talking about low cerebral perfusion, it may not matter whether it's because of a clot or a bleed or just low perfusion because your heart ain't working.
Yeah, what's interesting is the difference, though, in how you're going to manage that, right? In post cardiac arrest or post ROSC, and especially given, where I think your system is, both your previous one and your current one, and where our system is, we are aggressive about post ROSC hypotension and giving push dose epinephrine, starting folks on Levophed. You, at least right now, don't have that option in head injury. Now, I was today in a meeting where someone pointed out that there's some very preliminary work that indicates that there may be a benefit to low dose pressors in head injury. Mind blown right there.
No, you can't do that. You're going to cause vasoconstriction, Ritu. What are you going to do now? You better hyperventilate them.
But that
was sarcasm, everybody. Don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about post-stroke care. We had our Oregon College of Emergency Physicians conference this week, and one of my friends, Ted Lowenkoff, who's a stroke neurologist, talked about how post-stroke care, we want high blood pressures. We want blood pressures around 160, and so I think there's a potential renaissance occurring in post kind of brain insult blood pressure that we may see.
One of the things that was interesting to me, and this is one of the things that is so great about NAEMSP, the content presented is wonderful, obviously. The ability to do pre-conference workshops for up-and-coming medical directors, up-and-coming researchers, folks very interested in quality improvement, great pre-conference workshops. But man, those hallway discussions are so really helpful. And I had a conversation with Rob Walker, who's with Physio Control. And one of the things we're talking about is how do you extract data from a monitor file, which has very close to continuous data on heart rate, pulse oximetry, end-tidal CO2. How do you take that out, extract out the artifact? So we've all seen pulse oximetries that have been at 100% for 30 minutes, drop to 2, and then back up to 100. Bad waveform. We clearly know that's artifactual data, but when you just import that into your EPCR, we don't know it. And looking at the stuff that Smita did with Benghazi about hypoxia, this post-raw stuff. One of the things they really did, and Dan had done this down in Arizona also with Epic, was take a look at the dose response. So you multiply how low it is times the duration of that, and then you calculate the area under the curve. And perhaps it's that dose response issue that can help you identify benefit to the patient. But you can also use that exact same concept, and this was what Rob and I were talking about, to maybe do some AI to figure out what is artifactual data and just filter that out. So if it's not low past some threshold for some period of time, then you can filter it out. So really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. And the one thing there are a couple things I want to point out about the oral abstracts. Number one, NAEMSP made the decision to rename the oral abstract sessions the Menegazzi sections after Jim Menegazzi. Jim was the first editor of PEC. And it was funny that he got to present a paper, at the Menegazzi sessions.
Yeah.
I've known Jim for 30 years because he was at Pitt when I was a resident there and a fellow. And when NAEMSP started PEC, he was the first editor and just stepped down as editor last year. Yeah. Now, I will point out the first article in PEC. Do you know who the lead author is?
I don't, but I think we're going to find out.
Me.
I knew that was coming.
Well done, Ritu. So what was it? Tell us about it.
It was me and Bob Domeyer. No, it was me and Vince Macesso. We did a simulated experiment where we brought in actors to simulate like various spinal injuries, complaints, and then we sent teams of a doctor and a paramedic to evaluate these patients, these simulated patients, and we found no difference in the evaluation. So it was this idea that like a doctor is better at evaluating for spinal cord injury is false. It most likely it's that the patient changes between like getting EMS but if you present a doctor and a paramedic with the same data, they come up with this. They have near perfect agreement in patient assessment.
Didn't they do something? Oh, I was going to say, wasn't there a paper or poster about ultrasound and that very same thing? Did you guys not see that?
I did not see that one. I'll be honest. I know Jeff prowled the posters more than I did. The other thing, the second thing I wanted to point out about the oral abstracts, and then I want to punt it to Jeff to frankly talk about the abstract that the three of us were all authors on. But the other thing, just for you, Mikey V, and for your boss, so pass it on to like your boss, pass it on to Dilly, pass it on to Brent, Eric Beck. But in the first in the plenary session of abstracts,
you enjoy saying that word, don't you?
Plenary. I like plenary is a good thing,
it's a pretty cool word.
Because the abstracts were breakouts for most of the conference, but the top 6 abstracts are presented in the plenary. 3 of them were based on the ESO data set.
Yeah, they were.
And one of them was presented by Jeff Jarvis. But I think that, there's a woman named Remley whose stamp was all over this conference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big time.
But I think that, Brent in particular and Remley really need to be proud of the vision. And frankly, it was Chris Dilly's vision too.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying this because we use ESO, but I think this idea that, if you collect all this data, you got to give back. And it was really pretty apparent. Again, 3 of the 6 articles presented in the first or plenary session were from the ESO data set. One of which, again, was presented by Dr. Jarvis. Tell me about this interesting article, Dr. Jarvis.
I will, but before I do that, hey, Mikey, here's a quick test for you.
Okay, great.
What's the mission of ESO?
It's to improve community health and safety through the power of data.
So the reason I point this out is my organization is going through the whole Baldrige approach to tying everything you do to mission, vision, values. Every time I hear something about this, I just think about ESO as like that. Every single person who works for ESO knows that mission. Fuck, excuse me, Bill. I don't work for ESO and I know the mission. Y'all are so enthused about living that mission that it makes me want to live that mission. So I just wanted to really emphasize what Ritu was saying there. Um, y'all really do live this out. So one of the ways you do it is by sponsoring, working with the PCRF, the Pre-Hospital Care Research Forum, and sponsoring these research forums where you bring people together with research mentors and you work on a project. And it's a wonderful example. I'll just tell you about my daughter, Sydney, who wasn't entirely sure what she wanted to do, thought she might want to do some research. She came to one of these PCRFs at Rimley's suggestion and fell in love with research. Now she wants to get a PhD in epidemiology and, in her words, be a mini Rimley. So these research forums really do improve community health through data. It's really an impressive accomplishment. So hats off to ESO, and I'm not even an ESO customer anymore.
Yeah, that's a bunch of crap.
Really strong work.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I just want to do a quick plug real quick. So if anyone's watching, because we've been able to maintain a pretty good audience here, which is pretty phenomenal. So thanks.
Both of them are still with us?
Yeah. There's still like 3 people now. There's like 20 people, 15, 20 people. Anyway, but the point is that if you are interested in attending one of those research forums, it is open now. Registration is open now to submit your application. So if you just go to the ESO website and go to research, you can find all the information there. And it's definitely worth it. It's pretty awesome.
Boy, so good. And this is actually one of these things that can be life-changing for folks who think they want to do something with research but aren't sure. Boy, is this a great way to just jump right into the pool and find out. So to spin this back to how I was able to insult the good Dr. Sani in front of 1,600 of our closest friends, we did a paper, Ritu actually, and this is what I insulted him with. Is I said, we were, as all good ideas, this one came from sitting at a bar, talking to a friend and asking a question. And unlike most of Ritu's questions and ideas, this was actually a good one. The truth is it wasn't actually a bar where we had this idea. We were sitting, God, this just sounds like such gratuitous plugs for ESO. We were actually sitting in the back because, we're those people, in the back of the room at the ESO MD Summit, the Medical Director Summit, talking about these things and how to use data to really improve care. And Ritu says, hey, you know what I've always wondered? I've always wondered whether doing an intubation on scene is better than doing it en route. I kind of think maybe it might be, but there's no evidence for that. And I'm like, Ritu, I think there's a way to find this out. So we got together. This is a paper with Ritu and Mike and me, Rimley, and To
be clear, we had that conversation in the back, but then we planned it out in the bar afterwards. So
there you go. So
I
knew there was a bar in there somewhere or two. Well, the other person I want to point out is Al Perez. So Al is a 4th-year medical student now. I first met Al when he was a paramedic working with me at Williamson County. He's a great guy. He came and did a research clerkship with me from medical school. So basically what we wanted to know is, what is the impact of where you make your first attempt on success? And we looked at this, and by where we mean on scene, anywhere from on arrival to before you go en route, and en route, which is any time between en route and when you get to the hospital. We wanted to know if there was an impact on first pass success, either with intubation or a supraglottic. So we took the ESO data set, we did, stats and work, and what we found is 50,000 patients in 2021 who had at least one attempt at either a supraglottic or intubation, so an advanced airway. 28% of those were in non-cardiac arrest, 72% in cardiac arrest, which just bears out what I think most of us know. The vast majority of advanced airway attempts are in cardiac arrest. Yep. We found that in cardiac arrest, 7% of those first airway attempts were done en route. 7%. Another way of saying that is in cardiac arrest, 93% of the first attempts were done on scene. Okay, we like that. If you look at the non-arrest population, though, 29% were done en route. That means 71% were done on scene. So a lot more advanced airways being done en route in non-cardiac arrest patients. Now, overall, what we found is if you look at the first pass success, we stratified this by cardiac arrest and non-cardiac arrest just because of how important we think those are two fundamentally different populations. And what we found is that the first pass success is lower en route than it is on scene with both intubation and supraglottics, and for that matter, surgical airways. When we looked at non-cardiac arrest, we found that the first pass success was higher on scene for intubation and supraglottics. Interestingly, we actually found surgical airways in non-cardiac arrest patients were higher, like in route.
All 5 of them.
Exactly. I was going to say this is the tyranny of small numbers. I think we had 8 surgical airways in here. So the bottom line on this, we tried to control for all the normal things. We did a logistic regression, looking at age and sex and reason for the intubation and what your device was. Did you do intubation versus supraglottic? And what we found is in cardiac arrest, there is a 12% increase in the odds of first pass success if you make that attempt on scene versus en route. And in non-cardiac arrest patients, a 22% increase in the odds of first pass success. So the bottom line on this is we have to take the knowledge that doing an intubation en route can decrease the odds of first pass success and balance that with our need to get off the scene rapidly. And what we know from other literature is getting off the scene rapidly in cardiac arrest is, there's a word for it, bad. It lowers survival. So we really, this reinforces the need to stay in play on our cardiac arrest patients. And for our non-cardiac arrest, we need to balance the impact of not getting a first pass success, which we know is associated with more hypoxia and more adverse events, with limiting your scene time. So that's what we looked at. I think the key thing here, though, is understanding that this is the one good idea that Ritu has had.
Fuck you.
Oh, where's my censor button? Beep. There you go.
Actually, seriously, this was great fun. We have been, to be perfectly honest, why did we do this paper? Well, it's a good question. I think it's an important question, has important implications. But the truth is me and Mike and Ritu have been looking for a project to work together on for quite a while. When Ritu said this, I'm like, holy shit, this is an answerable question. Giddy up. Let's go.
Yeah, I think it's, I'll tell you my motivation, which is that there's disagreement between our medical directors. There's disagreement, and appropriately so, right? Like good academic discussion about kind of the best way to manage these head injured patients. And I think my personal view is that if you have to stay on scene for 5 minutes longer to ensure that you don't have hypoxia, hyperventilation or hypotension, that you're better off. Now, let's be very clear. We did not look at unrecognized hypoxia in this paper. That we don't have the monitor.
Or any hypoxia, recognized or not.
We did not look at any hypoxia. We just looked at this very simple question of first pass success in patients either on scene versus transport. And I do think this idea that first pass success is worse once you've left the scene is an important finding. And to me, it definitely kind of reiterates what we have done in the 2 counties that I serve. We have told people that if you have determined you need to do an airway, that airway comes first, and that scene time, because there is also no data that 10 minutes or 15 minutes are different. That's, you know, and there, let's speak, there's no, you know, Brook Lerner, which is a whole other topic we probably should bring up in this talk about NAEMSP. But Brook,
and
Lerner,
while you're at it, if hey Mikey, we can make 2 plugs. Speaking of, and thank you for bringing this up, Ritu, we can make 2 scholarship plugs. So if you can find the scholarships, that would be amazing. So thank you for bringing that up, Ritu.
So, you know, Brook Lerner published work that pointed out that there's no such thing as the golden hour. There's no data that proves that 10 minutes on scene impacts outcome in trauma patients at all. There is data that would suggest that prolonged scene times are bad, but 14 minutes versus 10 minutes, no difference. And I think that if I have no difference, but I know that hypoxia, what did you say, Jeff, 6 times? Something like that?
In TBI 6.6.
Yeah.
Adjusted. So, you know, I want to avoid that hypoxia. And it seems to me that running around and going in the back, and it just is more likely to be hypoxic. And the fact that we have shown that first pass success is reduced historically in that setting, I think sort of lends fuel to that fire. So I was, you know, and if it turned out that first pass success was better while moving in an ambulance, I was happy to eat crow and change the practice. I like to change practice based on research. So there's some other topics that we kind of hit on during NAEMSP. And again, if you're not a member of NAEMSP as a paramedic or researcher, you really should be. The organization itself is like 30% non-physicians. I get it that it's called the National Association of EMS Physicians, but these are the kinds of conversations we had over the week, as well as pirates. We talked about pirates. So I will give you, think back to your last EMS conference and think about the discussion that was happening, the median discussion. Let's not use averages. Let's go for medians because we're smarter than that. The median discussion at the bar. At NAEMSP, the median discussion is this. We're discussing what the best treatment for whatever is. What's the impact of hypoxia? Does it really matter? Yes, it does. Should we do first pass? Does it first pass success matter? Where should we do the intubation? What should we be using for TBI? What is the right thing to do for cardiac arrest? Those are the discussions that are going on at the bars at NAEMSP. So, you know, it seems like, by the way, I think we need to talk to Jose, who is the new president, and maybe Mike Levy, who's the outgoing president, and like fork over some sponsorship money, because it seems like we're working pretty hard to push this conference.
Well, they have their own podcast with our good friend Phil Moy, and we've and I'll be honest, that podcast exists because I said, "Hey, Phil, you want to do a podcast?"
Yeah. So, well, it's a great, and they do great work. The 3 of them do really good stuff. So yeah, even though, you know, if you have time after listening to the single greatest EMS podcast, which was, of course, the EMS Lighthouse Project, then you should take a listen to the EMS show and then the pre-hospital emergency care.
Just for the record, we have been the number 3 podcast in Zimbabwe for 7 years in a row. So
hey, I'm taking Estonia.
I don't even think you're on that list, buddy. I'm just saying.
Estonia, you got to pick your countries, man.
All right. So we've talked about TBI. We talked about some intubation, blah, 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 whatever, all that stuff. There was also some, yes, I will find that, Jeff. I'm trying to post some links in the chat right now.
So do you mind if we talk a little bit about what those are?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So I'll talk a little bit about Dr. Fowler and Ritu, if you don't want to mention, if you don't mind saying something about Dr.
Yeah,
Lerner.
I'm happy to talk about Dr. Lerner. Yeah.
So there are a couple of people who have contributed so much to our specialty of emergency medical services. So Dr. Ray Fowler, one of the original Eagles, is an emergency physician, one of the first EMS physicians, who is just possibly the kindest guy around. He's a kind, like truly wonderful human being, has been such a mentor to so many of us, and has been so good about mentoring young physicians, young EMS physicians, young EMS providers. He has a very serious illness, and the folks at his academic center, UT Southwestern in Dallas, have created a scholarship in his name to help mentor other EMS providers. I think we're working on a link in there. So I'm waiting on the link so that I can contribute to that, and I'm going to contribute to or have already contributed to the scholarship Ritu is about to talk to you about.
Yeah. So my friend Brooke Lerner is a EMS researcher who is who has served on the NAEMSP board of directors as a professional member. I had the honor of serving on the board with her. I don't even know how to describe her. I just don't. She's a hockey fan. She likes the Buffalo Sabres. Not quite a Red Wings fan, but she is one.
She's not a Stars fan, so this is the key thing, you know.
Yeah, right. That storied franchise in hockey, the Dallas Stars.
Hey, I gotta help out the new team.
Yeah, but I just can't describe the impact that she has had on NAEMSP, on EMS, on myself. She's just amazing. And the reason why she's one of the reasons why professional members are well represented in our association and our board, because she is just an extreme example of brilliance and kindness and humor. I can't speak enough. But anyway, Brooke has been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. She's and she was supposed to come to the conference, but unfortunately was unable to come because her health was bad. And so now we have NAEMSP. We have started a scholarship fund in partnership with GMR to basically fund research for, I think it's for paramedics. I actually have to double check on that, but it's the Brooke Lerner Scholarship Research Scholarship Fund. So the whole point, because Brooke is a incredibly well respected and accomplished researcher, was to fund EMS research. And again, would hope, and I've already donated to that fund, would just ask people to donate in her honor. Yeah, she's an amazing person who has accomplished a lot.
So I will tell you that I've never had the pleasure of really working with Brooke or getting to know her, but I've certainly read her papers, and that's had a profound influence on me and my view of the EMS profession. And I think there are thousands and thousands of us who have benefited from the work that she's done. Just looking at the video, there were these great videos that Dr. Levy showed at the awards ceremony, both from Brooke and from Ray, just talking to the members of the association that is so important to them, and looking at what they wanted most for us to do is carry on this contribution, both to research and mentorship. Really, really touching, and I'm just like Ritu. Please donate to these two scholarship funds.
And the highest award that NAEMSP gives is the Ron Stewart Award, named after the first president. Another one of my mentors, somebody who actually he started the Pittsburgh EMS. He started the emergency medicine residency in Pittsburgh, and he and Brooke Lerner was the recipient of that award this year. And one of the other very high awards that can be given is the President's Award. And Mike Levy gave 2 awards this year, and one of them was to Ray Fowler. So again, try to honor those folks as best as we can. Ray has been an incredible influence to all of us. I have spent many evenings with Ray, various meetings and so on. And, one of my associate medical directors did the fellowship with Ray, a couple of them actually, now that I think about it. And he's had a huge impact. So
I think any of y'all who have heard me talk about my my philosophy about EMS understand what my number one rule of EMS is. And actually it's my number one rule of life, and that's don't be a dick. Ray really personifies that. He's such a caring and kind man. And he has done so much for obviously the profession, but a lot of individuals in the profession just through mentorship.
All right.
Wild.
Yeah, that would be back to
crazy
you,
times. Crazy times. So I wasn't able to find the link for Dr. Fowler, but I did put the one for Brooke in there in the chat.
Let me see if I can find the one from Ray.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to put the old man glasses on.
Yeah. So Ritu, one of the other things you talked about, and then we'll get ready to wrap up here, was you mentioned talking a little bit about some DEI stuff. Did you attend a talk or something, or what?
So they did an entire track in this conference about diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah. And I'm actually not on the DEI committee because it tends to meet at the same time as advocacy. And we know that that's something that but the DEI committee presented, there were a number of talks presented and, NAEMSP sort of picked up that ball and talked about it last year at the conference. And then this year really kind of leaned forward into it. NAEMSP released a position statement about diversity, equity, inclusion, and the importance in both the workforce, how it's important to have a workforce that reflects the community that you serve, as well as the looking at outcomes and your quality improvement work from a DEI lens. And so there were talks about recruitment. There were talks about providing care. I want to give a shout out to the gang in Austin. Bill Leggio talked about some of their work in reporting cardiac arrest survival by race and by socioeconomic status. We had a lot of good discussion around those topics, and really pretty moving stuff and really compelling. And, this is an interesting topic because it feels political to people. And I'm sorry about that. And I think it's unfortunate, but the reality is that there are swaths of our society that have lesser outcomes because of a situation out of their control. And it could be because of your race. It could be because of your gender. Could be because of your zip code. And as providers of public health, it is our job to make sure that we are providing the best care possible, improving outcomes for everybody involved. And I think that, it's just so obvious that we need to do a better job. And as Mickey Eisenberg said, you have to measure and improve. And if you don't measure your DEI, if you don't measure the difference in outcomes, the difference in CPR bystander rates in different zip codes or by race, then you can't possibly improve. And that's really the key. And it's not political. It's not. People die because they don't need to. That should be enough. The conversation should be done there. People who don't need to die are dying. And it's our job as EMS and public health professionals to figure out why that's happening, who that's happening to, and measure and improve.
So I heard the term measure mentioned in that DEI discussion by Ritu, 10, 15 times? What an amazing coincidence, Ritu. I happen to be involved with an organization, a national organization in EMS that is associated with, say, promoting quality through the development of measures. I will tell you that is one of the concepts that we're looking at is, do we need, and if so, how can we validate and promote good measures around the inequity in care. Let me put it that way. So I think one thing we can do, this is my, what can we do in our systems? One thing you can do is just measure it. And I think probably the best thing to do, most of us would agree that those patients that are in pain, and if, let's say you have, I don't know, some weird black box connection to hospitals where you get data from the hospital, like in exchange for something else, and you get this data, take a look at the patients diagnosed with long bone fractures. All of us would agree that shit hurts and we should probably do something about it. So take a look at your patients with long bone fractures who had an additional pain score of greater than, say, 5, who got analgesia, and then stratify that by race and do it also by sex, and just take a look at what happens. If it turns out there's no difference, no problem, move on to the next.
At least you looked.
At least you looked. And it turns out if your data, and I'm sure it won't, because just like the children of Lake Wobegon, y'all are above average. If your data shows no difference, more power to you. At least you look to move on down the line. But if you're like almost everybody else and see that there is a difference, I'm not telling you why that difference is there. I don't think any of us know. That is a very, very complicated question. We just know that there is a difference in how we treat people based on their appearance. And maybe we should all agree that's not a good thing. And we should figure out what's driving it and then try to make improvements on it. And what's driving it? Unbelievably complicated. I've been looking at this data. I'm by no means an expert, but I've been looking at it because it really got my attention. I have no clue why it exists. All I know is that it exists, and we should look into it and try to address it.
Well, again, it's like every other problem. It's multifactorial, but you don't know, you can't look for the answer, and you can't improve unless you look at it. And that's kind of the first step. And you know, and I think, oh man, I'm getting a little worked up here. But it's not about calling people out. You know, I think one of the things that I hear, oh, well, I'm not a racist. I mean, we looked at this, Mike, remember our friend Jamie Kennel, who we've had on the show, published a paper that showed that in Oregon, shocking, if you were Black or Hispanic, you didn't get pain medicine. And there was a group of people who I'm not a racist. Everybody's the same in the back of my ambulance. Well, you know what? Stop. Take a fucking breath. Stop being a snowflake and just ask the question from a system-wide perspective. Anytime anybody looks at this data, it turns out to be a fact. So rather than get defensive, because I'll be honest, from my position as a medical director, I don't think that any of my medics are racists. I don't think any of my medics are looking at patients going, you're not going to get pain medicine because you're not like me. But what I do know is that for whatever reason in our system, there is a hole there. And again, until you acknowledge that and address it head on, you're not going to improve outcome. And in some ways, this is like low-hanging fruit, right? This is easy peasy. You have a group of people who are having a lesser outcome than you would want. Let's fix that. So, I worry that people get defensive about it. My personal take on it is that no one is consciously having bias, but there is definitely bias built into the system, and it's our job to improve it and to make it better.
You and I had this conversation, not in this very chair, but on this very show, 2 or 3 years ago. I don't even remember what it was. And you and I had we had that same sort of back and forth.
Yeah.
So let me try to say this, because I recognize this is it's a difficult conversation, particularly for people who look like me. I'm a middle-aged white guy with, let's face it, balding.
I have like the most hair in this crowd. I love that.
Has challenges, growing a beard because I'm a white guy. Yeah, that's Ritu, because you're not a white guy. I think that's the reason.
I still have a giant forehead.
Yeah, what did we did the math and decided that the three of us have
72 heads between the three of us. That's right.
Exactly. Way too many. So I get that I don't want to be called a racist. And as soon as somebody says something that makes me think they are calling me a racist, man, all these shields pop up and I just kind of stop listening to them. But I think the importance of this is that the data is not telling us we're racist. The data is telling us that there is an inequity between how we treat people who don't look like me and how we treat people who do look like me. And I want to know why and what can we do to impact that. One of the things that has been researched on this, just looking at Black patients and white patients, pretending that the world can be broken down into two groups, which obviously it can't, but just pretending that. And what they found is that white patients got medical treatment way more than Black patients. But here's the thing that I want people to hear is that if you look at that discrepancy based on the color of the provider, it doesn't change.
Yep.
So Black providers also, if you look only at Black providers, they also have that same inequity. So I really don't think this is an issue about individual people being racist. What is the driver? I have no freaking clue. I really don't. But what I know is there is a difference. I don't like the difference, and we need to look into it and try to minimize it. So that, I think, is the key. And for all of the other people out there who look like me and might be a little defensive about this, just like I am, recognize that the difference is real. And I think all of us agree it's a bad difference. And we all want to get to figure out how we can minimize that difference. Look at it that way, and I think we can really get to a place where we're improving care for everybody.
Yep, and I think Ginger put a nice bow on that.
Well, what are the odds? What are the odds that Ginger would put a good, appropriate bow on anything?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are conscious biases. Like if you're from Columbus, Ohio, I have that bias. But that's conscious.
If you're from Austin, Texas, as opposed to the mecca of all that is good in civilization, College Station, Texas, that is the better descriptor there, Ritu.
Yeah. All right, listen, it's an hour and a half, boys.
And we just got into the A&M versus Michigan thing. I can't believe you want to cut this off.
Well, I mean,
I got 3 seconds until Ritu talks about the size of a stadium. What I found is people who talk about the size of their stadium, they have something they're trying to improve. That's all I'm saying.
I was trying to find one of these dang pictures here. I had to throw this up.
That's John Ling.
John Ling, yeah.
I made John Ling. John Ling and I have an ongoing bet. Since Michigan beat Ohio State this year, he had to wear a Jim Harbaugh jersey.
Yeah.
So
hey, help me out with this, Ritu. God, my memory's not very good on this. Where did Michigan end up in
you didn't fucking go to school there. You just show up, you like move in on one day. Next thing I know, I'm the biggest TCU fan that ever walked the face of the fucking earth. No.
I'm just, I got to support the local team. I'm an Aggie, died true, clear Aggie, but the Southwest Conference is no more. So, the Frogs are not in the
South. Us in that game. We were outcoached. Max Duggan played very well. It was still a crazy, crazy ass game with like a bajillion points, but
it was a great game. I have to say that
it was too entertaining for me. I wish it was less entertaining.
Hey, I've been there. I'm an Aggie, right? I feel your pain. It was less of a great game than it was more of a great game. Let me put it that way, than the ultimate championship. That was disappointing all the way around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unless you're from a certain community college, of course.
Exactly.
Actually, this is proof that I just quit caring because, after TCU, the team I cared about lost. I just quit paying attention.
One of the things that's gonna occur if I don't get us out of here is Ritu's bladder is gonna explode. So,
well, men of a certain age,
he has got to go. He's literally texted me like 17 times. I got it. He didn't. But I do want to get us out of here,
man. Be a professional. Use a cath. Come on, it's for the sake of the show.
He's got trucker's bladder. All right, let me get us out of here. On behalf of Dr. Jeff Jarvis, thanks for jumping on with us, buddy.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Let's do it again. I love it. Let's do it again. And Dr. Sani, good seeing you, buddy. We need to catch up more, but on behalf of all these jokers, EMS show, you got it. We'll see you on the next episode. It won't be too long. We got a bunch lined up, and some other cool projects. So anyway, have a good night, you guys. See you later.
Bye, all.
Hey, thanks for listening to the EMS show. Let's continue this conversation. What do you say? Check out the official Facebook page and Twitter feed. The EMS